Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to A Celtic State of Mind on this Tuesday afternoon. I'm your host, Declan McConville, and I am joined by Lawrence Conley. We're a man down, but we're going to go for it. Lawrence, how you doing?
Doing well, mate. It's no Celtic football to speak of, but obviously Bertie passing on, the Tommy Burns play, and Tony Ralston's sensational Scotland debut. It is no coincidence, mate. They eventually pick him and they get their best performance in years. I think it's just Tony Ralston's world and we're all living in it, mate.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Mm-hmm. Of course, there's probably no other place to start today. On Sunday, we learned the sad news that Bertie Auld had passed away. Lawrence, I'm going to come to you first. Bertie Auld, described by Bernard Ponsonby, if nobody's had a chance to check that out yet in his obituary, he said, if Billy McNeil is never to be forgotten, icon of Lisbon 1967, Jimmy Johnson, the irrepressible entertainer, Bobby Murdoch, the beating heart of this country's greatest ever club side, and Bertie Auld is the enduring spirit. Lawrence, he was the enduring spirit. Bertie, sum him up in your own words.
I don't know if you can. I don't know if there's enough words. There's just so much to say about the guy. He was everybody's favourite Celtic daft uncle that you're aware of from your wee guy, whether it was when he was managing Thistle or maybe you popped into Bairds and you saw him there. But he was just everywhere. Bertie, anywhere Celtic was, Bertie was. And Mosley, and just get talking to an old couple in a bar. Where are you from? Or him and stuff, and it's just it was everywhere, wasn't it? It was Celtic to everyone. It was, it's another line away, but it was just everything that was special about the club, wasn't it? Nothing was ever too much trouble for him. I mean, you'll know that with the club and the Star and Garter, that the amount of stuff he did for yous.
Yeah. No, absolutely. He was nothing was ever too much for him. I think we might be having some technical difficulties, Lawrence. I'm just checking the comments here. Can you let us know if we are having some technical difficulties, folks? And I should be able to sort that out. Don't know if it's in my end or Lawrence's end. Let's see. Lawrence, can you still hear me all right?
I can still hear you, Declan. I can still hear you.
Yeah, we're back.
Yeah, Bertie, obviously you named the club after him, mate. Cool.
Yep. You sure did. I think that's us back connection-wise. I think that's us. Yeah, so a couple of years ago, obviously being a Maryhill boy, there was no other person that we could name our CSC after than the one and only Bertie Auld. I remember giving him the phone call to ask him to give his permission to do it, and he was over the moon chuffed. He said, "Aye, go for it, son." He was absolutely chuffed that we were doing that. So we did go for it, and in those 3 and a bit years, he's been a great support to all of us. He's always told us if we need anything, just to let us know. He was always there at the other end of the phone for me if ever I needed anything, if ever I wanted advice, I could talk to him. And he was just a really good friend. And I think it's for some of us that get lucky to call some of these guys our friends. The Lisbon Lions go from these kind of mythical creatures that you grow up hearing about, the tales about, all about. I mean, to become your friend, it's it's one of the greatest privileges that you can get. And we're down to a squad of 6 guys left now, 4 that played that day in Lisbon, and it's just to think about appreciating them while they're still here and giving them the love that they deserve, because they are Celtic's greatest ever squad, Celtic's greatest ever team, and without them, something that Ange Postecoglou spoke about yesterday, they built the platform for the modern day Celtic, and without them, Celtic would not be the club that we are today. Do you agree with that, Lawrence?
I think, as well, it's the amount you see former players kind of, definitely, but you'll see kind of former players like Vega and Musa coming in, the effect that these guys had on them. a sad day that another Lion's gone, and as you say, we're down to six left. I think one thing they've all got in common: they can never do enough for the fans. They never lost that connection.
Yeah, and I think Bertie's signing at Celtic in 1965 is it's very important in the whole tale of it all, because obviously 67 is the place that we gotta all go to that sunny afternoon in Lisbon. But without that Dunfermline Cup final, which Bertie scores a brace in, and obviously Big Billy's goals remembered as a Towering header at the very end of the game. Without Bertie's double in the game, we probably wouldn't have went on to beat Dunfermline in that cup final. And where would we have been had we not won that Scottish Cup?
Yeah, I mean, first trophy, what was it, 9 years or something? And the previous, the 7-1 team, he was in every tie up until the final, because before he left, go to Birmingham. So his famous two results, that's 7-1 and Lisbon. But yeah, 65, going behind twice. Pool was level twice, recently passed away. Calling for ability to put in the back of the net and win the cup for us.
Well, that's it. And he was, if you watch that 67 cup final back, he probably was man of the match. He just completely dominated the midfield, and absolutely incredible performance, not just by Bertie and the other guys, but in that midfield with Bobby Murdoch. They were two very special players. And when I spoke to Paddy Creand a wee while ago, I asked Paddy, I said, do you think you would have got in that team? He says, probably not, son, because Bobby Murdoch and Bertie Older in there, and they two were very special players. So I don't know if I would have even got in the team, which says everything about the two special players that we had in there. That the year after, Paddy under Sir Rat Busby went on to win the European Cup as well. But that Dunfermline team that we beat was obviously built by Jock Stein, and we beat them in that cup final, and we went on to play the next season, got to a semi-final against Liverpool in a European tournament, robbed down there. I think any Celtic fan that you've heard stories from, if they were at Anfield that night, the bottles that came in the pitch.
Bobby Lennox offside goal, yeah.
And again, I think those kind of fixtures are very important in understanding. Celtic had went a run in Europe the season previous, 65-66, before we went that run to the final in Lisbon, 66-67. And I think, for a lot of the players, they probably would say that they gained a lot of experience from that run, Lawrence, and it was important in terms of the building under Jock Stein towards 66-67 season.
Yeah, definitely. And I think Jock, during that time, he was arranging European friendlies as well to give them that exposure. He obviously mastered the game, and he understood that they needed that and to come up against different styles. But 5 trophies in one season, and he was a major part of that, wasn't
he? Yeah, he was. And I think when he arrived, we played the Airdrie. I think it was an Airdrie side that had beat us just a few weeks previous. Bertie came in. I think we gubbed them 6-1. Bertie scored 5 of the goals. So it says everything about Bertie Old. But I think, as you're saying there, Lawrence, as well, if you go right back to the late 50s, he always referred to Jimmy McGrory as the boss. He was his original gaffer. Said he was a lovely man. Something a lot of former Celts say was probably Jimmy McGrory's downfall, that he was just too nice a person, maybe not in the football manager mould, a phenomenal player, but just a really kind gentleman that, stood with a big coat on and let them run round the track at Celtic Park with no ball in training. But I think, Bertie would also probably told me many a time, going into that dressing room with guys like Neely Mockin and Charlie Tully was a real grounding for him, and, excitement to go in there with such big names and kind of learn his football trade in there before he went down to Birmingham in 61.
Yeah, I think, McGrory obviously didn't pick a team, and Stein changed that, but he could definitely spot a player. I mean, out of the Lions, it was only Willie Wallace he didn't sign, so he definitely knew a player. But saying that, he gave Stein his chance at Celtic in management before he moved away, the same way Fallon, so McGrory definitely knew his football. And he wasn't a bad goal scorer.
No, he wasn't a bad scorer. I think he scored a few goals in green and white hoops, Jimmy McGrory. Thanks to everybody that's getting involved in the comments. Sorry for that wee technical glitch at the start of the show. Aran CSC, you're very welcome to the show. We've got folk from Belfast as well. We have Cork in the comments. Please, if you're want to share any Bertie Hill stories in the comments, please let us know some and we'll read some of them out, because I think it's, as we've all been probably shed a tear the past couple of days, it's very hard to think of Bertie Hill without smiling. Because if anybody that's walked through that front door at Celtic Park or walked down Kerrydale Street just knows how big and infectious character Bertie Hill was, and how much the Celtic fans loved him, and how much he loved the Celtic fans, Lawrence.
Definitely, whether it's supporters functions they turned up at a lot of, Baird's Bar for a while. He had a story for everything. Enough time. You're a wee cousin with you. He gets picture taken with him, and he always had a laugh and a joke, didn't he? He had some cracking comments, when John Gregg's tried to wind them up about being on a £10 win bonus, and Celtic's only been £5, but Bertie coming back going, ours is guaranteed. It's just, it's kind of lines that are going to be told over and over again, isn't it? As long as there's a Celtic.
Yeah, I think nobody's checked it out. Cy Ferry tells a story in open goal about coconut dog. If you've not checked it out, go and have a look at it. I won't ruin the joke. I won't be able to do it, and it's good a voice. But just sitting at a table with Martin O'Neill asking him, Martin, do you like dogs? It's just Bertie typified. Just no filter, right into it as per usual. And that was just him. He liked to laugh, liked to joke. He lived life and was always laughing. Always had a smile on his face. I don't think I ever seen him refuse a photo with one person after. If you remember back, Lawrence, we beat St Johnstone's 7-0 at the start of the 9-in-a-row season at Celtic Park on opening day, and he came up to the stand garter after the game. It was a really hot day. It was about 24 degrees or something Celsius. Came into the pub. I mean, he'd been to the game, did all his hospitality stuff, so he's probably knackered. And he stood in that pub for a good 2 hours and took a photo with every single person in that pub before he left, got up, did a talk, then left, which was just better. You don't get footballers like that nowadays.
Oh, it's definitely, aye, they're not. I think it's just a connection, we've heard a few people say, a fan got lucky, or, just still a fan of the club. It was so true, wasn't it? I think he had an affiliation for Thistle growing up, but as soon as he signed for Celtic, that was it. And there was no bigger Celtic fan out there than Bertie, was there?
No, I think that's, something Chris McLaughlin covered in his tribute last night in BBC. He said, although he did play for other clubs, obviously went down to Birmingham, was at Hibs for a while. He was a one-club man in the sense that Celtic Park was always where his heart lay, and he made sure of that and was always there as a present. And it's something we're going to come on to from yesterday's Ange Postecoglou press conference yesterday, when he was talking about players of the past being in and around the club and how important it is. But just to finish on this from Bernard Ponsonby, I think this was one of the lines that really summed him up when he said, let me just find it here. He said, where are we? Here, it's here. He said that old is a throwback to the age when players grew up as supporters and lived alongside others fanatics in an impressive egalitarianism. It was an age when heroes were not cocooned or aloof or unapproachable. He never needed to kiss a badge, pump the air with his fist, or utter pre-rehearsed sentiments about love of club. He knew he was the real deal, and so did those who follow Celtic. I think that sums Bertie Auld up perfectly. He was the real deal to all of us. The club, its fans, his fellow Lisbon Lions, I think are all going to miss him really, really dearly. But I think he'll always be in our hearts, and as long as there is a Celtic, the Lisbon Lions will always be remembered, Lawrence.
Yeah, definitely. Defining moment for the club, and perhaps for football as well. Just the style they played with. It wasn't just that they won it; it's the way they won it, wasn't it? And he epitomised everything about the kind of gallousness that team had.
Yeah, absolutely. Gallus is definitely the word. He was completely gallus. But to go on from that, and this leads us into yesterday's fan media conference that we had with Ange Postecoglou. Colin Watt attended on behalf of ACSOM. I was there on another capacity for the alternative view. Ange, took his time with all of us, answered all questions very detailed, It didn't look as if he was in a rush. Seemed very at ease with the Celtic support and came across in a very good manner. Lawrence, one of the questions I put to the manager was about legends of the past being visible in and around the club. How important is that to youth players? Was the first thing I asked him, because I'd read what Callum McGregor had said about Bertie Auld being in and around the club and getting to know him for years. But Ange said, it's been really important for me since joining here. He just came off the back of a cup of tea with Danny McGrain, and he'd had a chat with John Clark in the morning, and said that, sometimes, he said, when you're Celtic manager, you walk a bit taller. He said, you're in a very privileged position to be at this football club, and that when you go out there in front of 60,000 on a Saturday, he said, it's not me that's built that, it's these guys of the past that's built it, and anything that our current crop of players do to do that, we're only adding to the institution that's been built by those men of the past. How important are guys like Danny McGrain, John Clark, and other guys who are around the building that we've all probably met in many an occasion, just to have it around the club?
I think they're hugely. I mean, two of the guys that you touched on there, it's they set the highest standard possible. They show what is possible. I mean, Danny, the best defender in the world, who's voted, arguably for 4 or 5 years running. Some would say the best player in the world. I think it was Tommy Burns, his best ever player. John Clark's done everything, isn't it? See that big cup, the one with the years we won that. It sets standards for them. It gives them an idea of what the club's about, and they'll be telling them how to interact with fans and what it's like, what to expect, and give them just an appreciation of what's went in front of them and the hard work that's to get the club to this level to have that history.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's building. It is building in the past, and it's something that I think Celtic do better than some clubs. That was what Ange said yesterday, that we do recognise those heroes of the past that we all hold dearly. There's been a lot of outpouring of love and emotion towards Bertie, as there has been with every passing of Lisbon Lions and Celtic legends. Something Paul's came in here in the comments with. One of the questions, Lawrence, was about untapped markets. One of the guys at the press conference yesterday, and Paul saying here, he saw Ange's presser yesterday. He said, agree, as an Aussie, there's an incredible young talent in Iran and Iraq. This is an untapped market. Managers don't like to have to use interpreters. Ange used 4 in Japan. Obviously, Celtic, for many years have used the British market, European market. We've, meddled into some other markets at times. We've, now looking at Japan with Kyogo and the link to Yokohama Marinos, Ange's old team. But Lawrence, how important is it that we've got a manager in there that is looking around the place? Because a club like Celtic, we don't have budgets like teams like Manchester City and Liverpool. But if we have the right scouting department set up, and if you think back to a few years ago when we played Malmo, they had a lot of Paraguay players in their side. How important is it to get that right at the very start of this? Because, we've used the terminology of rebuild constantly, but if you get your structure set up in terms of scouting, how important could that be for the future of Celtic under Ange Postecoglou?
Listen, it's absolutely huge. If you don't get your recruitment right, you don't get the right players on the park. And you've touched on it, we've got a finite budget, so we do need to be looking everywhere. Whether it's we need to bring in interpreters to help with guys when we bring them in, so be it. We just need to make the best of what we've got and all opportunities out there. And we're not going to beat Man City in the race for a player generally. But we're already starting to lose players. There's rumours they're looking at another Celtic player to likes of Bayern, Man City, Watford. So I think, we need to be looking everywhere and get the best bang for our buck. When John Park was there, we brought in the likes of Van Dijk, Wanyama. We need to start uncovering these players again. It doesn't necessarily be from the same market. It could be from Iran or Iraq or Japan. Just wherever they are, we need to be aware of them. We need to have that scouting network set up and bring them in. But, your recruitment, it's all you need to make sure they work together as a team. I suppose McGrory, we touched on it, signed every Lisbon Lion bar Wally Wallace. We got the recruitment right then. We just need to be making sure we're bringing them in and giving these guys pathways into the first team and we're developing them. Because for a while, that pathway's really been blocked. When you look at it, but it's starting back under Ange, and he's improving players as well. Look at Tony Ralston's season so far. you can see that he's getting better game by game. So it looks like we've got the right man in charge for us. He's got, Kyogo coming in. He's looked brilliant. Abada from Israel. He's, although we've used the Israeli market before, I think he's willing to cast the net wide and maybe not be stuck to a certain cohort of agents, speak to everyone. Maybe that part of that's down to Michael Nicholson, the job he's doing as well. I don't know. And the short period Don Mackay was here, he obviously changed things as well. Part of that being the fan media that you were at. But we definitely need to kind of be searching everywhere for the next star. I think we're all hopeful that we're going to bring in 3 or 4 in January and maybe move someone as well. So Ange seems to have alluded to, there's a lot of it is going on in the background. We're already speaking to people, which would suggest that we're going to be a bit more prepared than we have been for previous Januaries, where it's down to a loan signing on the last day, and you're like, so time will tell. We don't have long to wait to see what the transfer window is going to bring, but we're certainly getting linked with a lot of players just now, which is good. But we've got a semi-final before that, and hopefully a final, and staying on top of the league. Listen, we're going to catch Bayern soon as well, and they've got a bit of injury crisis. Hopefully we can get something over in Germany soon, and set up a real meaningful last game with Betis. That if we beat them, that there's something to play for.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, at this point in time, mid-November, we're 4 points off the top. I don't think, pre-Pataudry people probably saw us getting that close. Obviously, we did have a chance when we talked points against Livingston to go to the summit of the table that day, but not to be. But there's going to be a lot of football in front of us. In terms of last week, ongoing on, the situation has changed. The league, the team at the top of the table at this current point doesn't have a manager, which is something Celtic need to clearly look at in terms of, although people would say we're still, in terms of the rebuild, we're still going through phases of it. We should be a lot more settled now. I think Ange has had probably not enough time to work with the players, but a right amount of time that he can get them playing to the football standards that he has done, which we've seen. And I think something you've touched on there, Lawrence, which is really interesting, is that path went at the first team. And that path went at the first team culminated in Tony Nelson making his Scotland debut last night. And we will come on to Scotland last night because I think it's worthwhile talking about Callum McGregor, especially last night, who I thought was absolutely exceptional again. But in terms of Ralston and other guys breaking through, the pathway is there, not just in terms of going out into the market and buying players in, but also for the youth team. And I think that's very, very important what the manager's trying to do, because he's said that everybody is buying into it, and players have said that people are buying into what he's trying to do.
Yeah, I mean, we can't afford to be losing our best young talent to Bayern Munich, Man City, Watford. We need to get the best out of them. Tony Ralston, all of a sudden he's in the Scotland squad. He got some minutes, and Scotland get the best result in years. I think that is absolutely no coincidence. God knows what the result would have been if he'd got a full 90 minutes. It could have been 5 or 6 now. But yeah, Tony's just a shining example for anyone at the club that was maybe not sure where their career was going, to have a look at it and go, well, look what Tony's achieved this season. There's no reason why, if I listen to the manager, I can't do similar.
Yeah, 100%. And, there's other guys like Stephen Welsh who'll be looking at Tony Ralston thinking, if I can kick on here, why not make that pathway through? We've seen John Souttar last night, break into that Scotland team. We're going to get onto him as well. So we'll just touch on him just now. John Souttar, Lawrence, he scored last night for Scotland after the ball was flicked on from Liam Cooper, header, put the ball right into the back of the net. He's obviously had a decent start to the season under Robbie Nielsen at Hearts. It looks as if he's over the worst of the injuries. Pre-contract in January, I think he's 25. Yes or no? Should it be a player that we're looking at?
Oh, I think we should definitely be looking at him. Yeah, he looks as if he'd fit Ange's system in terms of he's comfortable with the ball at his foot. He's a football player. He's having a good season. Why would we not be assessing him and see what he could bring to the club? Great goal for him. Initially when he broke it in the United team, he seemed to be doing well. Seemed to lose his way a wee bit at United, moved on to Hearts, and it seems, as you say, he's got over his injuries now, and he's putting in the performances that maybe his early United performances you thought he would do. So, listen, if we're not looking at him, there'll be loads of other clubs looking at him, because you don't often get players of that calibre up in a free.
No, you don't. This one for the listeners, people in comments. John Suter, yes or no for you? If it's a no, tell us why. If it's a yes, tell us why. It's an interesting one because the manager yesterday again said, Lawrence, he could go out there and pick up a centre half that just clears the ball, doesn't want to play his style of football. He's not interested in that. He wants to sign players that can play his way. I think, majority of the guys that we've got in so far, we've did that with. If you look at Carl Starfelt, for instance, I know he's taken flack at times, but Ange says it's a transition going from a team maybe that are used to getting 40-30% of the ball in a game to going to somebody that's at 60-70% of the ball in a game. You're asked to do a lot more with the ball. You're asked to recycle the ball. You're asked to make moves with the ball at centre half that maybe just wouldn't do at other teams. So it's about getting players into that mould. But I believe that we've got a manager that can do that with any player that he believes that he can go out and sign.
He's got a track record of doing it. We spoke to Jared and over in Australia and Dan in Japan, and they said, look, it's his first season, he's building the team, he's moulding it. I think we're ahead of where any's expected to be just now. So, we've touched on what he's done for Ralston. I thought Taylor was having a good season until his injury. So it's two fullbacks that are young. They seem to have adapted well. They were singled out for praise by the manager. They've got new contracts. Starfelt settling in well. Carter Vickers just looks like he's been here for years, doesn't he?
He does, yeah.
And, he's got a plan, and the manager, he's got a vision. I think that helps a lot. People have bought into it. And he's right, don't buy people that don't fit the vision, because they don't add to the sum of the team, do they? They probably take something away. If you can get somebody in it that fits your vision, it'll work better. So, interesting times with the transfer window coming up. But hopefully we'll get a League Cup in the bag by then. And you never know, if we pull a result off over from Germany, I could see us taking something from Betistan.
Yeah, I think that Betis game, especially the way we actually played in Seville that night, that there's no reason why we can't go toe-to-toe with Real Betis. I mean, we saw Scotland go toe-to-toe with a Denmark side last night that hadn't, I think up until the last game against Moldova, hadn't conceded a goal. They had a 100% win record, but Scotland went right at them and get the results. So it just shows you that, in terms of football, any team can do it if they're really wanting it in the big stage. And I think, the way we played in contrast against Denmark to the way we played against them at Hampden, night and day. Again, that goes for Celtic. Obviously, we get the 2 goals, went 2-0 up there, and Betis 4-3 it finished. But there's no reason why we can't go and get a result against Betis. And even Pellegrini, I think, said, don't write off this Celtic team, because we've got good players in there that can hurt you. And again, we were still in our very early auspices under Ange. I think that was only Jota's second game for Celtic that evening.
Yeah, listen, without doubt, we've improved with a team since then. If we go to Leverkusen and take something off Leverkusen, why couldn't we beat Betis at Celtic Park? It used to be a fortress in Europe. We can get it back to that. They've got 2 games with really nothing to lose in them. Yeah, they've shown that there's goals in this team, and we're improving. So we know Bayer's got a bit of an injury crisis, and I think that's their best game of the season, was the result against us. So go over there determined to take something from that and set up, a meaningful game in the last game.
That's it. Yeah, I think Europa League would obviously be playing a tougher opponent, but it's a competition that Celtic fans would maybe like to have a good go at. But again, there's some still decent teams in the conference, but we've got that place secured. We've had this conversation last week. We both feel that in terms of the team, we've probably overachieved in Europe coming this season, just at the stage that we were at. And touched on Midtjylland yesterday. It's something we've spoken about on here in terms of where we were at that time, playing a settled Midtjylland team compared to where we were as a club. If you look at the starting 11 that night, it's a completely different team, completely different setup, and it's a lot more settled now. We probably, I think over 2 legs would beat Midtjylland. I'd still stick to that. We'd have played a very difficult PSV Eindhoven side. I don't know how we would have fared against them, but again, we dropped into that Europa playoff game against Alkmaar, and were exceptional. Obviously, Jablonec before that, but Alkmaar, a team that were settled, a team that had good European pedigree, and we looked very comfortable over the two legs. I know it was a bit under the cosh in the away game, Lawrence, but we got through the tie, and that was it. And so far in the group stages, Ferencvaros, champions of Hungary, I mean, we're absolutely, cushy against them home and away.
Yeah, but being fair and Faris, I think it's a reflection of the team's progress, isn't it? We're getting better results when we're going. I mean, yeah, fair and Faris was just easy, wasn't it? It was just, as you said, home and away. Betis going 2-0 up. If the team had been a wee bit more settled and a bit more experienced, 2-0 really you'd expect to not get beat that game. But saying that, ends up 4-3. You'd attain that before kickoff. That's a good Betis team. Probably the team was Bayer, losing so heavily to them. But the keeper had a cracking night. We had a couple of bad misses. I think it was just a wee bit of a freak result there. I don't think that it was truly reflective of the game. And, maybe the players will be feeling that, and they'll be going to Leverkusen going, what, we owe them something.
Yeah, 100%. And the context of that game as well, bringing Callum McGregor back in from injury and Kyogo as well. Obviously, he had a chance earlier on in the game, but you could tell he wasn't 100% at his best. And obviously, right bouncing off after that game, he went up at Pittodrie and get the result, which seemed to have kind of kick-started us. So, I think there probably will be a wee bit of a hurt felt in that dressing room after that 4-0 performance at Celtic Park. And they'll probably look to go to Germany to try and get a result. But just going to go back to what we're discussing with John Suter. We've got a lot of folk commenting on it. So, yep, it's a yes. Seems like the doctor, usual commenter on here. He's saying, well done to Suter. He proved them wrong. I think he proved a lot of people wrong last night. I saw him in the team going to Hampden and I thought, but he, played very well, took his header really well and looked very comfortable at the back against a very good Danish outfit. If the price is right, well, he's a pre-contract, so it would be a freebie. And I don't think in terms of wages, we'd be looking at anything too astronomical. Let's keep going. His wage may be a stumbling block. Do you think it would be a stumbling block, Lawrence, or do you think we could come to a deal? I don't expect that he's in too much money at Hearts compared to what we could probably offer him.
So it depends what other deals he's got on the table. If a Premiership club comes to him, or who else is looking at him, is going to that's going to set the market for the wages, isn't it? We're going to be able to pay more than anyone else in Scotland comfortably. It's just if anyone else outside of Scotland starts looking at him, that's when it would get a wee bit sticky. If somebody from down south says, well, we'll give you 20 grand a week. It's something that he's gone from maybe, I don't know, what would be on at Hearts, 3 or 4 grand, and we didn't expect him to pay him 8 maybe. So it depends what the competition is for his signature. But I'd like to think that we're going to be at the head of the queue. We're at least going to have a chat with him and try and tie him down. Because, but listen, you've got to buy a ticket, you're going to win the lottery. He's got to be a guy we're looking at and speaking to see what he'd want to come to us, try and beat other clubs to it. Listen, and the clubs that maybe be looking at him down south, they're not going to be playing in front of 60,000. They're not going to be winning trophies. There's stuff that, we can offer them over and above money.
Absolutely. Daniel's saying that he thinks John Suter would walk into a team his levels above Carl Starfelt. I'm not too sure about that one. I think Starfelt still, I think he's became a lot more comfortable in terms of, Ange's style of football. But I do think John Suter would work in a style of football. And again, one of the comments here from David Kelly, one of our usual Tuesday contributors, saying getting Starfelt for free allows us to spend money. And a few other positions, that is something probably crucial about it as well. But we wouldn't need to have a big outlay here, Lawrence. And in terms of the position of centre back, obviously we've got Cameron Carter-Vickers with an option to buy. Apologies, I got that wrong a couple of weeks ago. I said I wasn't sure, and I was corrected. We do have an option to buy Cameron Carter-Vickers. I would hope that we do have that conversation with him. Again, we'll be up with a player and whether he's quite happy to come to Celtic once the deal to happen. Got Julian there. Julian, who's still, there's a big question mark to when he'll actually return. We don't know. We keep saying after this international break. But the manager, I think a couple of weeks back, said, he's still a good bit off. We've got Stephen Welsh in there, of course, and we've got Carl Starfelt that we splashed 4 million on. So in terms of what we've actually got, in terms of the 4 there, Lawrence, obviously Dane Murray, the youth set up. I think Suter would add to that. And, you can't really be too short in centre backs with Celtic's luck, can you?
Not with the injury record, no. Listen, he ticks a lot of boxes. He suits the style. He knows the league. You know, he's not going to cost the earth for us, is he? You know, we do have a finite budget. So, yeah, I mean, it's going to be Ange's call, but I think he's definitely worth looking at. And if we can tie him up, it may stop him going elsewhere in the league. You know, you could get that double bonus. Where else are we going to look to strengthen? I think attacking midfield. The midfield's something that's just not looked right. And maybe another forward, because Giakoumakis has looked a wee bit off it, but, you know, he's still got time to come good. But if Kyogo's to get injured, you're worried again. And perhaps at the other end of the park, you're looking at getting Barkas out and then a backup keeper in. Maybe Barkas and Bain out and getting a backup in. Because we've still got Connor Hazard there, and, you know, he's an international keeper. So, yeah, if we get Suter in for free, it lets us spend our budget elsewhere, doesn't it?
It does let us spend our budget elsewhere. It's obviously positions left back. We've got plenty of left backs in the building, but we don't know if the manager is going to just persist with Josip Juranovic, who qualified his country. Croatia qualified for the World Cup the other night. I thought he was exceptional. He got taken off before they get that goal, but he was excellent. He's a proper footballer, Josip Juranovic, and I think that was a real good deal to get in the building. It's a good player to have around the building. Somebody saying in the comments here that Denmark were here on a holiday. Well, the rumour was, Lawrence, that if Denmark went the group 100%, they were all getting 117 grand each as a bonus.
Yep.
So I don't think they were probably here on a holiday. I think Scotland did the Danish FA a turn last night.
Listen, they were gutted that. And that left back, don't forget Tony Ralston. We now know he can play left back. You know, it's so it's no. Listen, it was no holiday for them. They were gutted to lose that game. What team wouldn't want to go, 100% record? No one's giving that away lightly. No professional footballer. So great result, but yeah, left back. Hopefully, Taylor's still a wee bit away, but it's who else comes in. Does Bolly move out? Because I think he's way down the pecking order. What scales his position? Who knows? And Montgomery's done well, but is he more left winger?
Is he a left back or is he a left winger? Is the question with Adam Montgomery.
So it's maybe something that we'd look at. Who knows? But I think midfield priority, maybe another striker and a backup keeper, and get rid of some of the players that just don't fit. That are perhaps on higher wages, and just try and move them out. Barkas, Ayeti, Boy. I think we've kind of touched through those three numerous times. That if we could get them off the wage bill, would free that up for us.
I think Bolingoli's a real interesting one, Lawrence, because obviously we've seen him featured against Livingston and Motherwell. In both games, he was okay. Didn't really do anything wrong. At Fir Park. He looked very comfortable. But it would appear, that the manager just doesn't fancy him. He appears and he disappears. And as you say, if he is one of the higher wages at the club, I'd imagine he would be. I think the fee that we paid for him from Rapid Vienna was about £3.5 million. If it's wages that can be freed up to give other players, we need to get them shifted. It's a no-brainer. And in terms of the goalkeeper, as you say there, Vasilis Barkas, if he goes out the door, there's a question mark. A lot of Celtic fans maybe over Scott Bain. I don't know about that, because obviously Scott Bain, broke into that Celtic team, I think, as Alan said, on Friday in Merit under Brendan when he dropped Craig Gordon. He looked very comfortable with the ball at his feet, did everything that the manager was wanting him to do. And then after the Cluj game at Celtic Park, Neil Lennon obviously just didn't fancy him at all, dropped him, brought in Fraser Foster. And then when it wasn't going well with Barkas, he turned back to Bain. So I don't know if that's just a case of, Scott Bain just not having any luck in terms of, selection-wise. And when he's picking and choosing a run of games for Scott Bain underneath Ange Postecoglou would maybe do him the world of good. I know he's featured a bit this season. But in terms of Joe Hart was to, pick up an injury, would you have confidence in Scott Bain coming in and do his turn for a few games?
I don't think he's anywhere near the level of Hart, and I think maybe that's the worry. The gap's so big, isn't it? And and it's a position that, listen, when Ange came in, he fancied Barkas over Bain, so it's kind of he's going to do his a turn at a certain level, but it's something that I'd like to improve that backup option, shall we say. I think we could do with a better option. And you know, for Scott Bain, maybe it's probably his last ever move. You know, it's maybe his time for him to look elsewhere and say, right, I need some first-time football. Because he's probably all players benefit from playing, but the only way he's going to get a run of games is an injury to heart just now, isn't it? A sustained injury, which no one wants. So, yeah, it's maybe... But then again, it depends on who we can bring in. You know, who else is out there in the keeper, what standard. You know, I'd be moving Barkas out the door before Bain, but yeah, it's still something I look to improve on. And if I could get, you know, somebody decent in, I'd say, well, we gave Conor Hazard a new contract. How many keepers do we need? He's an international keeper. Do we gain anything we have in Bain playing in front of him? You know, is the third choice keeper? I'm not sure we do.
Yeah, there's also the lad, his name escapes me now, but that plays for the B
Toby.
team at this moment. Toby, yep.
Yeah,
He's been on the bench a few times. Yep. So again, you know, that could be somebody that we could possibly look to. He's obviously got the manager's trust in terms of being on the bench a few times now. So he's one that we could possibly look at. Anybody in the league for you, Lawrence, that you would take in terms of the goalkeeper position? Obviously, Siegrist is one that gets batted about a lot. Marciano, the former Hibs goalkeeper at Feyenoord, another possibility you'd maybe look at. Or Xander Clark.
Listen, won 2 cups. He was in Scotland's most successful team last year, so he's got to be worth a look. You know, it's not often provincial clubs win 2 cups, and goalkeeper's got to have been a big part of that. So he's got to be worth a look. But maybe you're right. Maybe I think Ange might look within first. Maybe Toby is a guy with a big future. He's playing England under 21s. He's not a bad keeper if he's doing that. You know, and the answer can't always be to buy. So perhaps Ange is looking as he's been on the bench a few times. So maybe he's saying, you know what, that boy's worth trusting.
All right, guys.
All right, Paul. We're all sorted technical wise.
Sorry there. I just thought I'd pop in to say hello. I'm not going to cramp your style, Declan. You run the show, and if you want to hear my opinions, you're free to ask. But I just wanted to say hello. You look very smart, Lawrence.
Listen, as always, mate. As always.
Yes.
Or is that I don't normally?
No. You always scrub up well. And, of course, Declan with that T-shirt, an absolute classic for a legend of your CSC as well. So, sad day yesterday. Yeah,
it was a sad day, Paul. Touched on that at the top of the show. You know, I said that, you know, in the 3 years that I've kind of got to know Bertie, he's been a great support to me with a good friendship. And he was always on the other end of the phone for me. I'm going to miss him, like all Celtic fans are going to miss him a lot. And I know yourself, you know, you were there that night in Greenock, 50th anniversary, and he, you know, defied belief. I think for those few months he was in Lisbon, doing a thing with STV. He was at the Hydro. He was in TalkSport. He was in George Square. And that day, you know, the day after the 50th anniversary, he went from a lunch in the Doubletree Hilton in Cambridge Street down to Greenock to see the supporters club down there. Then he was going to another function, wasn't he, Paul?
I know. And by the time we seen him in Greenock, Declan, he was standing there with the top button out, and the tie was down, and he was, you know, but he wanted to do it because I think his words were all about, you know, his teammates. He just wanted to do it in memory of all his teammates and the bond that group of players had. It's there's a lot great about the modern game. You know, I don't always want to give the modern game a kicking, but there's a lot that's been lost, Declan, and that bond between that group of men that lasted a lifetime is something I don't think we'll ever see again.
No, it's not, and you know they were a family. I know, you know, especially guys like John Clark and Bobby that were really, really close to Bertie. We'll miss him a lot because, you know, a lot of the time they were always at the do's together. I was talking to John's granddaughter the other day, and I was saying, you know, the two of them together were really, really good because Bertie was the, you know, rather loud, boisterous, loud one, and Clarkie was the dry humour that always kept him in line. One of the stories down at Irvine was we're kind of standing, so I'm talking to Bertie and usual, you know, blah 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 about Mary Hill and whatnot. And Clarkie just nudged him and says, "Listen, look at that queue." He says, "We're here all night and do this. We'll be here all night. You shut up. You take the 40. Let's go." So that was just Clarkie always keeping Bertie in line.
Brilliant. The other thing I was going to ask you, of course, you were in yesterday with the Ange Postecoglou press conference. and he's not someone that I've had the pleasure of speaking to. Colin was representing ACSOM yesterday, and I just wanted to ask the pair of you, Lawrence, as well. I had a chance to watch it last night in full. It was about 3/4 of an hour, and every time I hear this guy speaking, I love him even more. But it was the fact that it's fan engagement, Declan. This is something we were screaming out for last season, and he's embraced it. He's embraced it in a big, big way. I think when I look at the club, Fran Alonso, of course, is very, very good at that, engaging with fans. But Ange Postecoglou, for me, he just gets us as a fan base. Do you think, when he goes along to these events like he did with the Tommy Burns one, the reaction that he's got has maybe surprised him a wee bit, Declan? The positive reaction that he's got?
Yeah, I think one of the stories in the group chat that we were all in, Kevin Tate was saying his wife was up taking a photograph of the queue to send it back home because they couldn't believe it, and he said he's never been invited yesterday to as many people's houses ever anywhere he's went. So I think Celtic fans have certainly taken to him, and personally he's a very nice guy. I've had the pleasure of meeting him once. Very humble, very unassuming, and he just does get Celtic. And I think all his core values and beliefs, as he touched on yesterday, are very much in the Celtic ethos. And we have really got ourselves a gem of a manager here with a vision as well. I think something that Celtics did really badly in previous years is short-termism. If we can give this guys the right tools and keep him at the club in terms of a vision and where we want to be, he's definitely the right man to do that.
Did he call you mate?
He did at the very end of it, yes.
What did you do?
In a very positive way, though. No. It was a thank you, mate. So it wasn't a bad mate. Don't worry about it.
I think if he calls Celtic fans mate, it's a different mate, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Mainstream media.
But it looks,
that continue,
a lot more comfortable, Paul, with Celtic fans. I thought yesterday, just in terms of the longevity of it, 45 minutes plus, good part of an hour, and just sitting, talking away. He looked very, very comfortable, going through a manner of different questions, but answering them all with detail and an insightfulness that, some managers just wouldn't, bother doing. But he's obviously wants to make the time and is happy to make the time to talk to Celtic fans. He was in no rush whatsoever. He's obviously a very busy man, but was in no rush whatsoever and was quite happy to talk to the support. So long may that continue.
And you've met him? Is that a couple of times?
Yes.
Met him a couple of times already, just out and about doing his thing in and around
Not asked
Glasgow.
him up with a house yet. We'll wait till New Year for that. Maybe get him up for a swift one after we hopefully get a result in January, at the beginning of January.
Well, here's hoping. I didn't want to take this show over, Declan. This is your show, mate. So you just run with it, and if I can chip in, I'm happy to.
I will do. I think the reason you probably appeared, Paul, was to wish Tony Ralston happy birthday. Because Lawrence, I know you've mentioned it a few times, but last night he came on at left back, and fair play to him. I think all three of us probably doubted him at one point or another. Didn't know whether he could break into that Celtic team. But Lawrence, he broke into that Celtic team, he cemented his place in it, and now he's coming on for Scotland. And Stephen O'Donnell was okay last night, but I think, as you say, if Tony Alves was at right back, he might have had a better result.
Definitely. Listen, I think last Tuesday we said, undroppable for Celtic, unpickable for Scotland. At least, it might have taken an injury or a suspension for Steve Clarke to see the light, but he's played left back, and another man in the match performance for Tony Ralston, as far as I'm concerned. He's just been outstanding, isn't he? What a season. But we've touched on it, Ange's got a big part to play in that, and the hope that's got to give the younger players at Celtic saying, well, you know what, Tony's made it. There's no reason I can't.
Paul, what's your thoughts been in Tony Ralston? And I'm breaking into that Scotland setup now. Steve Clarke's obviously had the chance to look at him in training. Do you think that from now on he probably will be a pick, because he's obviously did something right to get on in the game last night? I know Andy Robertson had picked up a week of a knock, I think, when he went off, but he'll have had a good look at him now in training and probably knows what he can offer him. And in terms of his performances compared to Stephen O'Donnell at Motherwell, I would say Tony Ralston is far and above Stephen O'Donnell at this point in time.
And I don't even think that's because we're looking at this with green tinted spec deck. I just think that it's just it's factual in terms of the games that he's played, the level, and he's been playing in Europe this season as well, and his level of performance has been tremendous. It really has. I keep going back to the whole mental challenge of being a young player coming through. You're coming through. You're a contemporary Kieran Tierney at that time, so he's coming through at 17 under Ronnie Deila, and how many players would have already fallen by the wayside, Dick, before this season, during all that period. And I think the one period probably where it was more likely was, and it's not a dig at Neil Lennon, but during the Neil Lennon era, he was obviously not fancied. He played very, very few games. And so many players just check out, don't they? Then they get a contract somewhere else and they move around, and every so often you hear that they've moved to another club. I thought that was Tony Ralston's future. And what he's done this season, he's been thrown in because he was the only right back that we had. He was thrown into the pre-season games. We watched it with interest. And he has developed and got stronger and got better. And last night, I just think capped that part of his career. I don't think he needs to justify it. I don't think, those like yourself who had doubts, like us, everybody on this show, we all had doubts about Tony Ralston. We didn't think he was going to be the guy at right back to take us forward. But as Lauren said before, you wouldn't drop him. We've got a Croatian internationalist playing out of position to accommodate him. And that for me is a compliment to Tony. And it's something we'll probably focus on a lot more and in more depth, maybe later in the week when Kevin and I are on with Tony on Thursday. The 5 right backs that Tony Ralston's seen off at Celtic Park, and the levels that they came in on and the profiles that they had, and Tony Ralston's outlasted a whole lot of them. So he's deserving of his contract and he's deserving of that debut for Scotland last night, 100%.
Absolutely. And everyone at ACSOM wishes him a very happy birthday to the Bricky. But somebody in contrast to Tony Ralston, who maybe hasn't shown as much in a Celtic jersey this season as of yet, is James McCarthy. One of the comments coming in here is, can you let McCarthy go as well? Now, the manager yesterday, Paul, said, he didn't want to make excuses for a player, but in terms of when they brought him in, we'd taken him when he was a free agent, no club, and he said it was always going to take time to get him up to speed. So it would seem that Ange Postecoglou, I know Lawrence definitely hasn't written him off, is saying that James McCarthy's still got a part to play here at Celtic. Do you still see McCarthy giving us something and justifying that 4-year deal, which I think all of us were still bemused that it was such a long-term contract that we gave him?
I was interested to hear that response. But this is the thing with fans, Declan. We talk about it all the time on the bulletin, and then when we get the opportunity in the fans forum to speak to Ange, these are the types of questions we want to hear. What's happening with James McCarthy? And I'm not sure who asked the question, but it was an excellent question. And I can understand that if he's not had the full pre-season under his belt, even though he obviously on a personal level try to remain fit, then not only has he come into full-time training, but the intensity apparently of Postecoglou's training as well is extremely high. And he's picked up niggles that perhaps once he's at full fitness won't be an issue. I'm glad to hear that Ange Postecoglou sees a future for James McCarthy at Celtic, because that's one position at the club that I think I'm not 100% sold on, that we've got a first pick. If you want to call it the number 6, Beaton, he's playing well there at the moment. Declan, another player who, we've said it with Rogic, we've said it with Ralston. We wouldn't have minded too much if he had left a few times in his Celtic career. But he's doing okay there. And of course, we've got Sorrow. But McCarthy, for me, is your first pick when fit. I want to see him firing on all cylinders. He is only 30. People talk about him at 30 because of the injuries that he's got, Declan, that he's had in his career, as if he's 35. He is only 30. And he's here for 4 years. And I just hope that we can get a run of games out of James McCarthy. I said kind of earlier on in the season, it's certainly not been proved right yet, that he might be the surprise package. He might be the black sheep who comes into a game as the season progresses. And I hope that's the case. I'm a big fan of him as a player.
Yeah, I mean, we've all seen, flashes of him in his time in the English Premiership with Wigan, Everton and Crystal Palace. He showed that the quality he's got. He showed that in the international stage for the Republic of Ireland as well. So, we want him to kick on. But interesting to hear that the manager of the game is full of praise for Neil Beaton yesterday, saying, he's been a key player for him so far. Paddy's told us it was Hamish that asked the question. Hamish, another top man that always does a good bit in the fan media stuff too. Lawrence, to come to you on this one, this was Colin's question, and this is what Postecoglou asking him. He was asking him about the rebuild. He was asking about the second phase of the rebuild and where we're going in terms of structure. We've brought in Anton McElhone. We're seeing the positives of that coming to fruition now. But this was Postecoglou's answer back to Colin. He said, "There's no doubt going into January, we still have some work to do with the playing roster, particularly in terms of depth in certain areas. In terms of the structure around here, we still need some work around our recruiting and our scouting department. That will be the next focus for me to make sure we get the right people in the area. That's probably the one area where football is changing rapidly. The information that is out there and how you get that information and how you use that information, particularly around scouting, that's the next step for me in terms of January." What's your thoughts on those comments? Because he's obviously clearly saying that we're still, threadbare in a lot of departments, and we really, do need to keep a focus on it. It's good that we know we are. There's self-awareness there from Ange. I hope there's self-awareness there from the Celtic board in terms of filling those positions that he's obviously saying we desperately need people in.
Yeah, you've touched it. We're aware of it. He's made other comments that we're working on it. At least he seems to have a structure plan, the way he's approaching stuff. He's already speaking to players and he goes, right, the next thing I need to sort is this. He seems to have tightened up the sieve, so much so that I don't think it's a sieve anymore. The best record in the league defensively. He knows the areas he's got to work on. We're doing better. We're scoring goals for set pieces. Jeez, who would have thought that? He's definitely a man with a plan, and he's done it consistently wherever he's been. So I think we've got to trust the process with Ange. He's a guy. Anytime you hear him speak, he's a guy that knows what he's doing. There's an honesty in the way he speaks, and he's genuine, and it comes across. And I think that's why people want him so much. But you've touched on it. He's praising beating. Early in the season, it was Ralston and Taylor, 3 players that were whipping boys for the fans. But I tell you what, I've not seen Ange do. I've not seen him throw any player under the bus. I've not seen him do that, which has got to be brilliant from the player's point of view.
100%. Yeah, it's a really good point, because there has been, some performances where it would have been very easy for the manager to not take responsibility and just, throw players under the bus. But he's always taking responsibility. He's always the one that says that this is on me and only me. And I think that's testament to him as a manager, and that lets players like Tony Ralston, who again I think that Celtic team from last season coming off the back yet were still mentally hurt. I think there's a core group in there that went through every turn. I know we brought in 12 players, but your core in there, McGregor, Turnbull, etc. Went through a really difficult period. Stephen Welsh as well at a young age, to come in, and I don't think that would have helped them last season. But it's about building that resilience, Paul, and he is doing that. And as Lawrence said, he is a man with a plan. He has got a vision. It's just about him being back to properly execute that now, isn't it?
It is, and Lawrence said trust the process there, and I think earlier on I said, is trust the process this season's keep the faith? And I don't think it is, because last season when we were getting told to keep the faith, and I love keep the faith, right? I don't mean the Bon Jovi song. I love keep the faith as a moniker. I love the fact that, there's a connection with it to Northern Soul as well as Celtic. But yet last season it was blind faith. It was keep the faith for what? It's never going to get any better. This season, at least we've got that plan, Declan, and that's the thing. Trust that process, trust that plan. And I think we've seen enough to suggest that the plan at the moment, it won't be 100%. I think Ange is maybe something of a perfectionist when it comes to it, and he's going to utilise everything he possibly can. But the big thing yesterday about that engagement was it wasn't contrived. He does, and we've said it before, he does get the Celtic support. And at this moment in time, I feel that the board are in a very precarious situation with the Celtic support. And the only thing keeping us happy at the moment is Ange and his team. Now, we know that there's other developments kicking on at the moment, and there's been protests against them, Dec. So the board need to realise that if they don't fully back this man in any way, shape or form, and I'm not one of these guys that say get rid of the backroom team, because he's obviously happy with them, because he would have made these changes. Yeah.
Yep, he said yesterday he's comfortable with all of them. So
he's happy with them.
We'd all agreed that as long as he was happy with them as a support, that's fine by us.
100%. But back him. Really, really back him as much as he requires. I don't want to come out the transfer window, for example, thinking that, we're running maybe a couple of bodies short. Because we are. We're still running a couple of bodies short as we're we sit here just now, you were talking about goalies earlier. I don't trust any of our backup goalies other than young Toby, and Connor Hazard perhaps, because I'm not quite sure what the situation is with Connor. But Barkas and Bain, I'd rather they weren't in goals for Celtic, even if Hart's injured or suspended.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think, it's a key position, your goalkeeper, and you saw how, big an issue it was for his last season. And that wasn't a depth issue, that was his pick the number one, because it seemed every passing week as we were in the deepest, darkest lockdown, as if we were just putting the names into a hat and picking out what one was going to play in goals for us. But to finish today, obviously Saturday is going to be, I think, an emotional day for all Celtic fans that will be at Hampden and probably watching on as we pay testament to Bertie Auld, one of Celtic's greatest ever players. Dubbed as Mr. Celtic, he probably does as well deserving of that title alongside guys like Tommy Burns, Billy McNeil, even Nearly Mockin as well for everything, John Clark, guys that have given everything to the club. But going to Hampden, Lawrence, it's going to be a big occasion. I've not been there for a wee while. Looking forward to the game, and again it's St Johnstone, a team that Bertie Auld scored the only goal against in 1969 to win the League Cup. So could be a wee bit of fate written in that, but it could be testament. Bertie said that Hampden was Celtic's second training ground. They used to park their car there all the time, thinking that that's where they used to go. So, as the wee man would say, can they play? I think the Celtic team can play, and I expect a big performance from them on Saturday.
Yeah, listen, definitely, as you touched on it, Bertie's training ground. St Johnstone's a good team. Won 2 out of 3 trophies last season, won both cups. So they've shown they can do it at Hampden as well, but I think we'll have more than enough for them. Ange's got his playing in a style. Listen, the players will all have met Bertie. They're going to take that extra bit of motivation, aren't they? They know that the fans will be looking for that performance that's going to, honour Bertie here, match his memory. So I'm expecting us to win the 3 or 4 here.
Hopefully Callum McGregor puts in an old style shift, Paul, as the midfield general in there. You're quite confident that, and amongst all the emotion and stuff, that Celtic will go to Hampden on Saturday with a fresh approach to the game. As I said last week, it might help that we're not going straight into league action. This game is, of course, not a free hit. We want to be at the final, but in terms of playing St Johnstone, it's a St Johnstone team that have a very different approach to how they play this in the league, and sitting behind the ball because they need to get a result, and obviously the game needs to be decided on the day. So I think in terms of that, it probably suits Celtic a wee bit better, this fixture, than it will St Johnstone.
I mean, huge respect for what has been done at St Johnstone. Last season was unbelievable. I think they're weaker this season. I do think they're weaker. But in saying that, some of these teams we do find difficult to break down. If we came away, I'd love for Lawrence to be right, but if we come away with the same score that we did back in the Bertie Auld Cup final with a single goal, happy with that, get us in to the final. And the thing with that final that you referred to earlier, that was the one where Tommy Gemmell was controversially dropped at the last minute for Davy Hay, wasn't it? Davy was just coming into the side and Gemmell was dropped. Was it for his exploits for Scotland when he booted the West German? Yeah, I think it was that. And there was tension between him and Jock Stein. Davy Hay came in and played in place of Tommy that day. But I'd be happy with a 1-0, to be honest with you, Dec, at this stage. And just, the next 4 games are crucial for Celtic. We spoke about it the other day there. We've played 4 games less than the entire John Barnes tenure at Celtic. So he got 29 games. Ange's on 25. And to match his win percentage is 65 point something, we need to win the next 4. The big question is, can we? 2 league games at home, St Johnstone in the Cup, and we've also got Leverkusen as well. So away from home. I think we're capable, but even if it's a 1-0, I'll be happy.
Yeah, I think we'll all take a result as long as we're in that cup final, which is where we want to be in December, which would really give the team a platform to kick on into the new year. And it would get, first trophy under the belt for Ange. And in terms of League Cup, it's a competition that, the route, it's not easy, but it's accessible in terms of, Celtic with what we've got. And if we get home ties, you're only 3 games away from the final, I think. So there's no reason why not. We can't be there. We've obviously, faced a tough Hearts team in the first round of this competition when we entered it. won very comfortably off the back of the Rovers, obviously, in this game. So there's no reason why we can't be in that final. We want to be in that final. And I think it'd be a real tribute if we can go on and win the cup for wee Bertie. But to everybody that's joined us in the comments, thanks for joining us. We'll be back all week in the build-up to St Johnstone at Hampden on Saturday. I'm sure there'll be other tributes for Bertie coming in from all our contributors on ACSOM. But to everybody for watching this afternoon, to Lawrence and Paul for his cameo appearance in the Tuesday Club, you're welcome anytime. Thank you for watching A Celtic State of Mind.